Alexa, stop.
Yo! Hello, everyone. Sorry, Jade and I were having a jam out. So we're going to have a special guest today talking about Breakfast of Champions. You guys might know him. His name is Hade Husani. You guys might know him as Jade. He also plays Meliorn in Shadowhunters. So let's first check in. If anyone wants to know the name of that song, it's Chasing Highs by Alma on Spotify. It's so... Alexa, play! She don't want to do it. No, it's so good. It's so good. Jade showed me that song.
Obsession, new Obsession, Alma, check it out.
For real. So,
oh, you know what? I'll follow. Also, aesthetic.
So, sorry, I'm just trying to, catch up. How should we talk about this book? First of all, let's see. What are your first thoughts? What do you guys think so far of Breakfast of Champions? This is our second Kurt Vonnegut novel. So how do you feel about it? How is it hitting you so far? Fun. Okay. We've got fun. Well, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, right there.
Wait, I could add you. If you send requests to join, I can add you.
Oh, cool.
A lot of great commentary. It's amazing. Awesome. A little weird, but I love the way Vonnegut uses irony to describe society. That's Vonnegut for you. Love it so far, even though Kurt's way of writing was kind of weird first. It is kind of weird. But once you get into it, it starts to make a lot of sense, and it starts to really work. Really enjoying it. It's not something I'd normally read. Awesome. Love the drawings. I love the drawings too.
Yeah, me too. I think
like
style
it.
works amazingly with the content.
Okay, cool. Style. Yes, I think so too. A little sad. Yes, I agree with that. I think Kurt Vonnegut is a little sad in this book. Everyone, the book we're discussing today is Breakfast of Champions. We're discussing the first 105 pages or so, or the first 11 chapters. So if anyone's curious. I was lost at the beginning, but now it's really amazing. Awesome. I'm from Brazil. Also awesome. A bit naughty, but very compelling. Yes. He talks about the book being different in the preface. Yes, he does. Let's go to the preface really quickly, because I want to read something that'll help you kind of understand the place of this book. Jane, can you do me a favor? Can you Google the year that the book was written?
I think it was 1973.
Right? 73.
Right,
so
yeah.
it's the end of the Vietnam War. Okay. So,
First published by Vintage in
73.
1973.
So, very simplified and blunt descriptions of society and issues such as racism and segregation. Yes. And so on. That's one of his lines, yeah, and so on. So I'm going to read this one thing from the preface so we can understand it. What do I myself think of this particular book? I feel lousy about it, but I always feel lousy about my books. My friend Knox Berger said one time that a certain cumbersome novel read as though it had been written by Philiboid Studge. That's who I think I am when I am seemingly programmed, when I write what I am seemingly programmed to write. This book is my 50th birthday present to myself. I feel as though I'm crossing the spine of a roof, having ascended one slope. I'm programmed at 50 to perform childishly, to insult the Star-Spangled Banner, to scrawl pictures of a Nazi flag and an asshole, and a lot of other things with a felt-tip pen. To give an idea of the maturity of my illustration for this book, here is a picture of an asshole. So one thing that Kurt Vonnegut is, right at the beginning, he says this book is a sidewalk sidewalk strewn with junk, trash which I throw over my shoulders as I travel backwards. So it's literally a book about, he's literally saying, okay, I'm going to destroy all the things that I was taught, because I'm going to get rid of all the junk that I think doesn't make any sense in my mind. Am I okay now? Am I still covering the mic? I'm not even holding from the bottom.
Where the mic is right there, no?
Mm-hmm. All right, so I was just saying, so this is literally Kurt Vonnegut's book, where he's taking all of the preconceived notions of society, the things that you're taught with no explanation, the things he feels doesn't make sense, and the things that he's like, these have never served me in the future. He's like, I'm getting rid of all of those and I'm starting over. Because now I'm 50, now I've lived long enough to be like, wait a second, a lot of this is ridiculous, and he's like, no one can tell me anything because I'm 50. So, I'm going to do it. So I think that's a really cool thing about this book. So let's talk about the two characters of this book. There's actually three. There's three main characters. You have Kilgore Trout, our novelist and writer. Who recognizes that name, Kilgore Trout?
Let's see.
Tate is always handsome.
He's not the pirates were able to take whatever.
Yes, Elliot Rosewater's in there. The audiobook is actually read by John Malkovich, so it's a really cool one if you guys are more audiobook people. It's a good one. I like him. Yes, Kilgore Trout is the writer that Elliot Rosewater mentions as the best writer ever in Slaughterhouse-Five.
Yeah.
So we've already met Kilgore Trout, guys. We met him when Billy Pilgrim was in the hospital after the war, and his mom came to visit him, and there was this well-to-do gentleman sitting next to him. That well-to-do gentleman was Elliot Rosewater, who spoke highly of the writer, Kilgore Trout. So we've already been introduced to this character in some way. Now we're going in. Kilgore Trout, this guy who is a representation of all the artists who continually put their work out there, kind of hoard out, for hopefully to get some sort of recognition and never do. Think about it. His work literally goes into pornography magazines. There's something said about that. Mm-hmm. Vonnegut isn't... He does something for a reason. He's not just going to be like, it's going to be like this. Mm-hmm. No, there's a reason. There's something he's calling out there.
Is he going to go into it more later?
I don't remember. I hope so.
Because I find it so interesting how this writer doesn't care where his books end up. He just kind of sends them off and writes them just for the pleasure of writing them, which I think is really great.
He's an artist. He writes because he has to.
Yeah, without caring about what it brings to you. How many people got to page 100? How many people are way beyond? How many people are done? Because this won't take long to finish. But he's okay with his work in pornography magazine. I think he's okay with his work just being published anywhere.
Just having it somewhere that he can go see it.
In print.
Because he doesn't even make copies for himself. So the only way he's ever going to see it again is if he sees it printed. Yeah.
And back then, having your things printed anywhere was a big deal because there was no screens, there was no internet, there was no computers to write it into. So it was like either on paper that you wrote yourself, if you had a typewriter at home, or something that you would send off that would be printed in any publication, which would be a big deal for you.
I think he put a lot of drawings in his book because it's like he's making fun of the reader, as if he thinks the reader is stupid and he needs to explain himself better. Okay, you could say as making fun of the reader, but then Kurt Vonnegut would never want to ostracize, I think, his readers like that. I think instead what he's doing is he's, clarifying for himself as a point of irony, because he knows that he's saying things that are kind of crazy, or kind of, not considered cool, so he's kind of being like, so this is what I refer to when I mean it, but society does this. I think of the beaver, specifically. He's like, society has made it this gross thing. not even a gross thing. This thing on a pedestal.
It's true. It shouldn't even be.
But it really is a rodent that builds dams because it loves water. That's what it really looks like. We made it this.
Oh yeah, I think it was a funny. Just look.
I think he's kind of just like trying to point things out. I don't know if he's calling the readers stupid though.
No.
But I think he's definitely trying to be like.
He's calling out society. Like, why do we take certain parts of the body and we decide that they're like offensive or anything like that, and you know we obsess over making that thing secret when we know we all have that body part. We all, you know, well not all, but I mean.
I'm going out there to show them what nobody's ever seen at an arts festival before. A representation of all of the thousands of artists who devoted their lives to search for truth and beauty. I have a question. Was it Meliorn listening to Simon or Jade listening to Alberto in 301? In episode 3?
Combination of both.
Yeah. What is the purpose of life? To be the eyes and ears and conscience of the creator of the universe, you fool. That's one of my favorite lines, and I feel like that's something we can all take away together. Be like, what's our job here? It's to be the eyes and ears and conscience of the creator of the universe. But one thing I think he leaves out there is you're to do that, but from your perspective. Because like everyone's different, we can't all be the same eyes and same ears. We're all different ears and different eyes, and that's why it's cool. Because he's got eyes everywhere, in that sense. You know? He understands everything because he is everyone. Yeah, not one perspective that needs to be relayed to people. No, I think every perspective is valid. Needs to be relayed to him because they're all his, you know?
Meaning him writing three characters.
Well, I'm talking, in the book at one point, you even got the, they say, what is the purpose of life? And then Kilgore Trout says, well, to be the eyes, ears, and conscience of the creator of the universe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's so true, too, because that's what we are. We are split perspectives of the same source, really.
In case you guys didn't notice, Kurt Vonnegut was woke.
Yeah, very woke. Very, very aware.
Don't know why, but page 82 really hit me. Let's look at 82 in yours and 82 in mine and see what they're saying.
The little lamb.
Okay, then I'm going to assume it's this one. The part where he slept like a lamb? I love his writing style. Me too. Me too.
All right, down.
Okay, oh, look, this girl named Tessa commented. I love when he uses his stories to describe normal situations in such a way that you realize their obscurity. For example, he describes a world where people sticks to things, thanks to gravity. Describes a word where people sticks to things. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, well, I think one thing he's doing is he's always trying to challenge what we think as reality, what we think as normal, and what we think as acceptable. That's pretty much what this whole book is. In the beginning, when he calls out a bunch of things that are built in our society, he's saying, we've decided that this is normal, but this isn't. Mm-hmm. You know? So he's trying to play the devil's advocate there and be like, oh, but he's also doing it in his very, like, Kurt Vonnegut way, where he's like, I'm just going to bring this to light. I'm going to tell the story about a fake world where they have people that do this, and the little automobiles, they ruin their country, and now they're going to another country, and it's like, well, automobiles and eating fossil fuels and stuff is what's ruining our world.
Interesting.
So he made that comment through another planet as though, and it makes us kind of be like, well, they shouldn't have done that. Maybe automobiles should have found safer ways of eating food and whatnot. Oh, wait, we're doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, so he definitely uses those normal situations to kind of like, to do that. Everyone's saying hi to Tessa.
I love the part at the end of chapter 8 with the kids creating this Pluto gang to fix stuff that's wrong with society.
Oh, let's look at that. Wait, what was what did they comment? What did they say again?
I love the part in chapter 8 where kids create this gang, Pluto gang, to fix stuff that's wrong with society.
Oh yeah, but remember the kids didn't create the Pluto gang. Society did, right? Kilgore Trout said these men from Pluto, and then the media jumped on it and called it the Pluto gang, and then because of that, now there was this movement called the Pluto gang. I sadly can never find the time to read books, but I love these lives because the constant stories don't seem to be the bookstore. That is when I have time to read them. I would say, sorry. Oh, okay. Bye, Sarah. Sorry, I keep covering the mic when I hold it. Oh God, hold it weird. So yeah, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. But yeah, what Tessa was saying, she texted me. What Tessa was saying was that there was, in that one story where people don't have gravity, they have nowhere to stick. It's talking about like if you. There's a theme here that Vonnegut's tapping into with that and everything, and it's this idea that if you don't have money or wealth, you don't belong on this planet. And he thinks that the most powerful country in the world, the United States, doesn't perpetuate that. They teach their citizens to take and hold on to whatever they can. And if they don't have to share it, or they don't want to, they don't have to. And it's almost saying like, and he says it, he goes, I wish that their anthem had more about brotherhood and, friendliness and kinship. Making an appearance today. So, I don't know. Non-conscious strength. What does that sound like, handicap Fernandez? What other books does that sound like? Non-conscious strength. I think he's actually alluding to a book that we all know. Yeah, I'm definitely going to start telling people they should get embalmed as an insult. Isn't that great? Oh my goodness. I don't want to use a headphone though. I hate headphones. You know what's annoying? It's that I've been doing this for how long? We've done 9 books, and this has never happened before. See, I remember when I first started reading this book in college, I loved it because he was challenging so much. So much of what I knew, so much of what society made you just accept. You never get to ask questions with society. You just have to accept the society you were born into. And I think that's what he's kind of saying. I think we're seeing that now with our generation. We're saying, we don't want to get born into someone else's rules. This isn't fair. We didn't create this world. No, we're going to make the world we want to live in and make it better for everyone. And, it's really cool. Do you guys want to do quotes? Everyone is entitled to a few bad days. The mirrors are hole between two universes. Maybe Billy Pilgrim used to look himself in the mirror very often, and that's why he was able to go to Tralfamador. Maybe Earthlings went on being friendly when they should have been thinking instead. I like this one. It feels very accurate for some reason. Sometimes we need to think instead of... I did not read this book for a class. I read this book because my friend Dave actually just gave it to me. He was like, ha. He was like, you should read this. I think you'd really like it. And this was actually my first introduction to the world of Kurt Vonnegut, was Breakfast of Champions. Charm was a scheme for making strangers like and trust a person immediately, no matter what the charmer had in mind. Somebody, sometime to sometime, he tried. Written on the tombstone. I thought that was powerful. Graveyards are filled with names that mean nothing to most of the world. Everyone's grave is familiar. But they all essentially say the same thing. It was a person. They survived from this time to this time, and they tried. They lived as long as they could. And I think that's something that he's doing there. He's saying, don't they realize that we're all equal on this gravestone? We're all somebody. We all lived from some time to some time, and we all tried in some way. Whether it says loving father, brother, cousin, whether it says loving mother, whether it says family person, whether it says great inspiration, whether it says nobody knew this person, it's all the same. I wouldn't say, Sophia, that it's a sequel to Slaughterhouse-Five, but it's definitely within the universe that he creates for himself. I mean, we've had a reference to two characters already, Kilgore Trout and Elliot Rosewater, two characters. He has his own universe in his books. His books create that world, and that's what he's doing. And then even the preface is tied into the rest of the book, very much like Slaughterhouse-Five, you know? He references himself as the creator of this universe. As there is a creator of our universe, Kurt Vonnegut is the creator of this universe. And he references himself as such in the beginning of the book, which we read a little bit, and he will later on at the end, when Dwayne Hoover and Kilgore Trout do eventually meet, which he describes. You know, he says it's a cool story of these two different universes coming together and how they completely changed the other. Rita, what do you think about that quote? You made sure you'd still have something worth wishing for to get out of the cage. Crazy, right? I like the quote on Kilgore Trout's tombstone on the first chapter. We are healthy only to the extent that our ideas are humane. How great is that quote? As long as we're healthy, as long as our ideas are humane. If you put that in the context of today, there are some ideas going around that we feel aren't as humane, so that might speak to our general health as a society. And I think it's important for us to have times when we realize that. Because it's like checking in, you know. Society is like a human body. It's built up of little cells, individual cells, us. And we're all working towards not only improving the body in which we live, but also in ourselves individually. And hopefully we can be better at what we want to do. Every once in a while, there has to be a check-in sesh, I think, where you're like, wait, we're not there yet. We need to fix all of this. And then we have to actively do it. Kilgore talking about how mirrors are leaks to other universes, worlds, reminds me of when I was younger. I honestly thought that. Was it just me, or did anyone else do that? No?
I did that, and I think it's true.
I think there's something to it, for sure.
Not 100, yeah, there's definitely something to it. Like, it's very interesting to think that there's a whole other world that goes into the mirror where everything's flipped.
No, not yet. Nothing yet.
You'll be gone but not forgotten. There was a similar quote in Slaughterhouse-Five, right?
I don't know. That's what I was thinking. I was like,
There is different... He talks of different races that live in the universe, so maybe...
I'm going to grab something, Jade. you dive in.
Okay.
Not that this matters. But yeah.
Okay. All right, taking over. I love that he wants to put the quote on his grave. It said, "Somebody, from some time to some time, he tried."
We just talked about that.
Favorite quotes. Did you hear something? No. And I did it. You did it. Maybe I got a little help. Kilgore's saying he used to be a conservationist. Conservationist.
He talks about that in a book. You haven't gotten there yet. Let's talk about that real quick. Can you guys still hear me? Even though the mic is over there on Jade's ear? So, conservationalist, because he talks about how the creator of the universe was never said to be one. Wait, nowhere in the Bible does it say that.
So you conserve stuff?
Yeah, hold this.
You just destroy stuff.
Yeah.
The great destroyer.
Hold on, let me find it.
So weird.
I think it's chapter 10. Okay, so the part in the book where they talk about this, for everyone that's curious, it says, he had a point. The planet was being destroyed by manufacturing processes, and what was being manufactured was lousy by and large. Then Trout made a good point too. Well, he said, I used to be a conservationist. I used to weep and wail about people shooting bald eagles with automatic shotguns from helicopters and all that. But I gave it up. There's a river in Cleveland which is so polluted that it catches fire about once a year. That used to make me sick, but I laugh about it now. When some tanker accidentally dumps its load into the ocean and kills millions of birds and billions of fish, I say, more power to Standard Oil, and whoever it was that dumped it. Trout raised his arms in celebration. Up your ass with mobile gas, he said. The driver was upset by this. You're kidding, he said. I realize, said Trout, that God wasn't any conversationist, so for anybody else to be one was sacrilegious and a waste of time. You ever see one of his volcanoes or tornadoes or tidal waves? Anybody ever tell you about the ice ages he arranges for every 500,000 years? How about the Dutch elm disease? There's a nice conservation measure for you. That's God, not man. Just about the time we got our rivers cleaned up, he'd probably have the whole galaxy go up like celluloid collar. That's what the Star of Bethlehem was, you know. What was the Star of Bethlehem, said the driver. A whole galaxy going up like a celluloid collar. The driver was impressed. Come to think about it, he said, I don't think there's anything about conservation anywhere in the Bible. Unless you count that story about the flood, said Trout. I think all that goes along with how we agree with our friends because they're our friends. All of the things we go along with just because they're our friends or because they have more power. Yes, that's another thing. So yeah, I think it's interesting. And then now there's one thing that this book does, and I think it does pretty well, but kind of scarily, is it's really calling out society on a very, like, I'm going to get to the base of everything and be like, do you guys really believe this? Do you guys really believe this? Do you really believe this? Because that's what you're saying when you say this. And I think it's fascinating that it's coming from Kurt Vonnegut at that time. Remember, this was also... Let's talk about the historical implications of the time period in which he was writing this book.
It's true. It's like, I feel like nowadays, you know, we have those thoughts that we're kind of more free to express, especially because of the internet and all this research that has come out. But he was writing that at a time where That wasn't like
That was not the common sentiment. But also at the time, so it was 1973 when the book was first published. What was going on in the early 70s,
the
late
revolution,
60s?
sexual revolution.
Sexual revolution was happening. Also, the Vietnam War was happening.
The whole awakening.
The whole awakening of just, wait, are we just following rules? Are we just blindly being put places? Or what is this government that we've created still working for us the way that it should be? And this is a problem that's happening now again. Mm-hmm. Wait, no, we created this government by and for the people, and right now it feels like it's working above the people, separate from the people. So this book is a very interesting combination of all these things. And at the 70s, remember, Vonnegut, we read in Slaughterhouse-Five, was a World War II veteran. He saw war and sees war as the ultimate worst possible thing humans do to each other and can ever be done. The whole part where he's throwing away his ideas of Armistice Day and Veterans Day, throwing away his idea of Veterans Day and Armistice Day, because in a way, in Kurt's idea, being a veteran himself, he feels as though Veterans Day is glorifying that version of him that had to do disgusting, horrible things to other people, just like him, all because they worshipped a different little flag. Yeah. Of course, there are greater things going into World War II, and we can talk about that later. But from Vonnegut's perspective, he was like, I did terrible, horrible things in that war, and I saw terrible, horrible things. And when I got back, people told me I was a hero, but only because we won. If we had lost, I would be as vilified as we vilify the Nazis now. Now, of course, there are other things within that regime and that oppression that are being called into question, but the idea of war and the idea of glorifying the men and women who go to war because of what they had to do to survive, he feels is just wrong. Like,
oh, that's interesting. Chloe's.
He was about and free, so Espresso's postmodernities of 50, but what I relate to Trout's obscurity only published in porn and youth, the idea is being ignored because of age. Yes, exactly, youth being, but the problem is, like, it's interesting because, he makes the reference twice. He's like, no one asked to come here, and no one wants to go to a place that's already broken. Like, it's a destroyed planet, slowly being destroyed by the people that live in it, and when you get there, you can't do anything to save it? That's not fair. Mm-hmm. And then yet the creator, people will say, talks about fairness and all of these things, but he's like, but he made it himself. He does this. So Vonnegut's really trying to so when I go back to his ideas of World War II, now you go into the 60s and 70s, where there was this war that was a very idealistic war. It was all about the different ideologies, especially when it comes to communism versus democracy and all of that. And he's like, wait, we're sending these kids away to die. For what? And then we're not even... Like, it was a very, 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 very... what's the word I'm looking for in the United States at the time? Chaotic, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It's not chaotic. There was a lot of energy happening, a lot of new things coming up, and a lot of people felt like they should say things. A lot of people felt like they should do things. Divided works. There's a specific word I'm looking for, but I can't think about it. I'll come up with it.
There's an interesting comment here about the
turbulent works. Turbulent isn't the exact word I was looking for, but turbulent is definitely one of them. Seems like the only kind of job an American can get these days is committing suicide in some way. Interesting, right?
There's a lot of racial commentary too. So many outdated notions that he's now choosing to ignore because everyone else deems them so. Whether or not he feels that way was questionable.
I think the racial comments that he was trying to bring up, where he's like, he talks about all these people the same way, but then when it becomes something about their race, they immediately become other or something else.
Yeah, I think it's a commentary on the ridiculous notion and words we use to separate, like describe each other in a separate weird way.
Also, remember, that was also around, remember, the 60s was the beginning of the civil rights movement, and the beginning of the 70s, 10 years after 1963, when there was that March on Selma. I think it was 63, right?
Or
The march, the Selma March with Martin Luther King. That was 10 years later, and still there was a lot wrong with the country.
Yeah.
People were not, that he was still not seeing that. So I think remember, Kurt Vonnegut is very smart, very, very awake person. So he was literally, his books, I think a lot of the time are used to call it, or this book specifically, is used to call it the hypocrisy in society, used to call out the rule following that just happens.
without questioning things. Is there a reason why we read Slaughterhouse-Five before Breakfast of Champions, or was it a random choice? Do you think we'd have a different opinion of Slaughterhouse-Five if we read this one before? That's from Rita.
Yes, I would say so. I would say the reason why we read this one next after Slaughterhouse-Five is Slaughterhouse-Five it has a lot of Vonnegut's themes, but it was an earlier book just in his artistry. Think about it. Slaughterhouse-Five was written in the 50s, 60s? This is now in the 70s. This is 10 years later. And that's why he says, this book is a 50th birthday present to myself. He's written other books. He's achieved some sort of, not status, but success, some understanding, some groundedness as an artist. He's been working now at that time. He always had been grounded. But now this book is his book where, in the preface, he sets that notion, like, I am going to be challenging everything. I'm going to put down what I've learned, and I'm going to start over, and I'm going to be calling out all of the bullshit that I see. Slaughterhouse-Five is different. Slaughterhouse-Five is a personal book. Slaughterhouse-Five is a book that he needed to write, I think. He needed to write this one too. But they're different, and I think the introduction into his world is better done with Slaughterhouse-Five, so you get to understand his style of writing, and then you understand his beliefs, and then it kind of, it reopens Slaughterhouse-Five, like, it like changes your perspective in a way, and it kind of allows you to take that book in even more after, whereas I think if you read this book first and then do that, it changes. And I only say that because I've read Slaughterhouse-Five multiple times now, and I read Breakfast of Champions first. But I think you should always read a few of Vonnegut's books first before you read Breakfast of Champions. At least one. Any of the other ones before Breakfast of Champions, because I wanted you to be introduced to Elliot Rosewater and Kilgore Trout. I wanted you to understand his style of writing, the way he writes, so that you can understand, oh, he's calling people out. So that when he's really doing it in Breakfast of Champions, you already know his style. You're like, I get it. I know how you paint. I can't wait to see your paintings. This was written a long time ago. Is it we're repeating history in a lot of the same senses? Racism, war, full circle?
Yes. I think life is just cyclical, and humanity's journey is a cyclical thing, so we always return to revisit certain issues, certain themes, to see if we can, ascend beyond them, or if we have to repeat it to discover if we, new things of learning, because until we learn something, we can't really move beyond it.
And remember, like what book did we talk a lot about time? Like we talked about in Slaughterhouse-Five. I brought up that whole point with Diego, how our eyes aren't looking forward on the human body, they're actually looking backward. And we're being propelled into the future. So all we can see is what passes us and what we've done. And that's the only way we can know in which direction we're traveling. Is by looking at what we've been passing. He couldn't have written this at an earlier time and been taken seriously. It's kind of like being a millennial. Even if what you're saying is important, it's not valid until an old white dude says it.
But not for long, millennials, not for long.
Yeah, all of them are going to be gone soon.
We're ready. We're the new wave. We're the ones.
But that's exactly it. That's why he mentions he mentions race. He mentions that. And he says, I'm behaving how I feel about a lot of white Americans or non-white, acting white Americans should think and should behave. He's like, remember, one of the cool things that I think I'm noticing in this book, and I've noticed in a lot of his work, is that Kurt Vonnegut was acutely aware of his privilege as a white man raised in this country. So, at this point, He's kind of saying, I'm going to use my privilege as a white man who people will listen to, an old white guy. I'm going to use my privilege to call out all of the bullshit that they pretend is okay, or they think is cool, or they think is fine when they know it's not. So I think that's a great comment. Thank you for that. I think that's awesome. I won't know myself until I find out whether life is serious or not. Is it dangerous? Yes. Can it hurt? Yeah. But is it serious?
Oh yeah, we don't know. Is this a game? Is this a bit like, should we take it that seriously? You know, we can't really tell until we're done.
No, I think that's a cool idea. Something I
Yeah.
never thought of.
But I think if we, yes, let's take it, seriously in the terms that we're here, we're experiencing, we love other people, we care of things that are around us. But let's not take it seriously in terms of all the pressures and the rules that aren't really natural that we have to, adapt to, like, for example, to pay to live on this planet. Why are we paying? Why are we paying to live on our own planet? Things like that.
So it's still such an American book. It calls out a lot of facts about American society I, as a European, find very odd. Yes, and I think that's one of the things Kurt Vonnegut was doing. One of the things about art is I think you're supposed to use it to call out society. You're supposed to use it to wake people up.
Exactly.
You're supposed to use it to bring an awareness to something that people couldn't understand beforehand.
And to have a lighthearted perspective on things, because it can get so heavy already just to be here on this planet.
And it is such an American book because, don't forget, America is one of the youngest countries around right now. So it is very ignorant. It is very stuck up. It does feel as though it can, it is present in the way that we're taught. I think one of the things that my generation is reaching right now is understanding. And when you travel, you're like, wait a second. When I learned this in American history, it wasn't like this.
Exactly.
And then you go to Canada or you go to South America and you learn a different version of history. Now, what book has warned us against that? 1984 has warned us. What happens when a society feels as though it can alter its own history to benefit the way it looks, to benefit itself? I don't agree with that, and I think that's our job. That's why these books are written. That's why it's important for us to keep reading them. That's why I had us read this one now, because Vonnegut is calling out all of this crap. And I guess we've read a lot of postmodern American books because it's very on my mind right now. I'm looking back to the artists and great thinkers and revolutionaries of the times before us to say, how did they deal with these problems that weren't as big or were bigger? How did they get through them, and what warnings are they giving us as a society? Because remember, one thing that I think, the reason why that tombstone is so powerful in this book when it says someone from some time to some time he tried, is because that's all of us. We are all someone from some time to someone, and we tried. Humanity, in essence, while every individual speck is different, is just one giant painting itself. So we all affect each other. So if one society goes down, who's to say we're not far from having an Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia? History is told by the victors, and we want to make sure that we're the ones winning, not the things that not the monsters we've created. Animal Farm also did that. I was thinking about having us read Animal Farm. Exactly. Yes. Rach in Japan. Rach in Japan. Rach in Japan. Are you in Japan named Rachel? That's awesome. I'm sorry if I messed up your handle. He talks about that with the pirates, the lies of U.S. history. Yes, he does. Why? Because that doesn't benefit a society that's trying to feel proud of itself. To learn that, wait, hold on, we genocided millions of Native Americans and millions of other communities that didn't either agree with us or look like us. And what about, like, the complete... There's a bunch of stuff in American history. And it's our job as a society to say, okay, well, we remember it differently, or we learned it differently, or we need to tell the truth here. Because what's really going to benefit our society in the future? Lying to ourselves and thinking we're great, or pointing out where we need to be better? And it's not that he's just saying just Americans. He's saying that all societies have this impending threat. And that's one of the things our forefathers were also trying to protect against. I love that he calls out the hypocrisy of our forefathers, but they're also trying to, he's like, no, we have to be aware. Always. Always, always, always. What's one of the reasons why I think 1984 is interesting? Because the lead guy wasn't born into it as an adult. No, as a child, he remembered a different world. But his parents before him and his grandparents before him failed him as a citizen. They failed him and allowed the world to get to the point where there were thought police.
Exactly. So it's our job to, we see the world the way it could become in the most negative way possible, but it's our job to, be aware and transform it for the future generation, because we are the future generation. We're the ones taking the reins now, Yeah,
so we can't fail our kids. We can't fail the next generations. And I think that's what Kurt Vonnegut is trying to do with his books, what a lot of artists are trying to do with their art, and especially this book is he's saying, hey, look, I'm now an old man. The amount of time I'm going to have left on this planet and the amount of things I can actually say are now going to be limited. But I'm going to make sure that before I go, I empty my head of everything someone else put there, and I only put thoughts and ideas in it that are actually mine. And I express those thoughts and ideas to everyone else after me, so that maybe one day in the future, I helped.
And maybe one day in the future, a bunch of us, thousands of us like this, would have a conversation right now, like we are living. If he saw this, what do you think he'd feel?
How do you think? That's another thing. Like with everything going on with the Parkland students and the calls for just common sense gun laws, like not even anything crazy, and it's being received with such a. I wonder how Vonnegut would feel about our president right now. I almost called him something else, but there's a lot that I think he would be super proud of these kids using their voices to perpetuate the world they want to see and they want to live in, a world that's more devoid of violence, a world that's more full of love and acceptance and just the understanding that we're all humans stuck on this planet together. Yeah, I feel like we are preaching right now. Okay, so let's do last thoughts before we wrap up today. Any last thoughts, any last comments you want to say? Anything else? Young people want to be heard. I agree. What does that say, Jade?
Sérieux aussi means like seriously, because she said that someone hacked her thing.
Oh.
Sérieux means serious.
Any other thoughts? It's your birthday today. Happy birthday. Everyone wants to be heard. How do you overcome corrupt politicians threatening your security over opposition? How do you overcome that? Well, our system, as of right now, is still structured in a way where, while they feel like they have the power, we do. We just have to be smart. We just have to organize. We have to use our voices. We have to scare them. We have to make them feel like they have to listen to us. Because if not, we can just vote them out, and then they don't have a job anymore, and no one respects them. They don't get Twitter followers. They go home to their sad lives. That's the threat that I think we have to make as a society. Being like, look, we created the system and we complacent, and now you're in charge. Well, we woke up, and if you don't fix your ways, you're going to be on the couch with us.
That's it. Not only that, but when there's things that are passed that are nonsensical, you have to be vocal about it, because if not, things pass. Laws pass without us even knowing, things like that, and we lose our freedom. But we have to be like, hey, wait a second, we're the ones deciding. You are working for us,
There's a book that I'm reading called On Tyranny. I'll post a picture of it later on my story. But it says like 20 things from examples in history, whether it be from our forefathers in the United States studying ancient democracies, or from currently right now studying what happened in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. We have to take the examples. We have to defend our institutions, whether that be art or news media, all the things that are meant to be checks and balances for our governments and whatnot. We have to not be afraid to stand out, to say, wait, no, I don't agree with the status quo here. This is wrong. We have to be able to support other people at all times. There's a lot, but we'll get there one step at a time. And one of the ways is by making sure that we read more, We question things. We constantly are trying to improve not only our lives, but the lives of those around us.
You trust yourself. You reach into yourself and trust what you feel and what you know without someone just telling you what to know or what to feel.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. And what we're doing right now isn't enough, but it's something. We're reading books, we're challenging each other's ideas, and we're questioning things, and we still live in places where we can do that. And we can say, you know what, no, I don't agree with him there. Whether that be the president or the guy at the gas station has the same amount of power, where we can say, I don't agree with you there.
It's incredible, but it's cool because after reading 1984, we still have freedom of thought, and that is like the most important thing. We still have the freedom to think what we want to think and to express what we want. And we got to keep that freedom alive, the freedom of expressing our truths, because when we lose that, then all that's left is the way we think, but it's not enough.
So, right now, we are going to read until chapter 19 for next week.
The Ouroboros.
Up until chapter 19, page 205, but chapter 19. Sound good?
That's going so quick.
This many pages. It's about 100 pages again.
Oh, look.
You guys are awesome. After Lord of the Flies, I think I'm going to have a couple of lady writers.
Fun.
Yeah. We're probably going to change the genre up a little bit too. We'll get out of some post-American stuff because I didn't realize that was kind of what I did. But thank you for pointing that out. We will be looking into more women writers, more diversity in what we write now. So I'll be looking into that with a couple of friends that I trust that help me find books. Yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying this book, and if you're not, I hope you keep reading. Isabel Allende is definitely up there on the list of books to read, so just remember that. But remember, after Lord of the Flies, I don't know yet. But we'll talk about what's going on. Thank you guys for joining today. Jade, thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Really
I'm happy to be
appreciate
reading
you
it.
to come. To our guests that came, Sarah, thank you for stopping by. Tessa, thank you for watching. Everyone, thank you for joining. Remember, the most important thing I think I could ever say and that you could ever take from me is that our jobs on this planet is to be the eyes and ears of the Creator of the universe, not only looking to improve our lives, but the lives of those around us at the same time. That's a big thing in leadership. In the Army, my dad talks about that. He talks about how leadership isn't just being the best leader you can be for yourself and trying to help yourself. It's also trying to improve the organization that you work in. So we're also constantly trying to improve the society that we live in, as well as being good leaders ourselves for people to look at, but leading through our following as well, and choosing who we follow and who we lift up and who we build. Mm-hmm. That's also being a good leader. Mm-hmm. That was weird. Thank you guys so much for today. Keep questioning things. Keep questioning key things. Keep asking questions. Keep searching for more. Keep being positive forces of change in the environments that you live and for those around you. Having a happy Easter. If you don't celebrate Easter and this was Passover for you, happy Passover. I hope it was great. And if you celebrate neither of those holidays, then spend the time with your friends and family. Have some fun. I'm going to call my dad right after I hang up because he's on this call. And have a great one, guys. I will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Remember, page 205, chapter 19 for next week, Saturday or Sunday. We'll talk about it. Peace.